So this Lucy Letby case is such an illustrative example of what I've been saying about psychopaths for years. And it comes down exactly to this. It's like butter wouldn't melt, saintly, a little serious, on an innocent enough topic, can be given to a chuckle occasionally, ha ha ha, and all this sort of thing. Nice, aren't they? Friendly, but above all, normal, passive, unassuming, ordinary, boring type people. The Here Be Dragons. That is what you absolutely must watch out for in life and in all things. Boring people. I swear to God, that is where like the major real perversion in society lies, I think. There's something perverse about boringness, I think, and the desire and effort in people to be ordinary or to assume a kind of ordinariness and not to be individualistic and not to express themselves and not to be themselves, not to be yourself outwardly. And yet, in essence, to be dishonest, right? Surely. Who is that person? Who's an ordinary person? Like, who doesn't have like a Thrasher t-shirt or something, or just something about you that makes you unique, you know what I mean, or makes you not you, but like it is forms part of your identity. Like it's very much like yeah, like who are you exactly underneath all those layers of personality? That's what I really want to know about people when I want to know about somebody. If there's nothing underneath the boring, well, I'm not interested then, am I? But then again, like I'm interested, on a very standoffish level. I'm interested, maybe interested, but like seeing you separated by some glass or something like that. And yeah, very much not in the sort of context of the organisation that's intended to deal with people such as this, which is actually the NHS and the criminal justice system and forensic psychology and people of that nature. Because like this woman is a serial killer. She's killed 7 babies. And this is the point of forensic science. This is like really what forensic science is supposed to do. It's supposed to like take an individual profile of a data set, an unusual occurrence of babies dying, right, of certain causes or something. Like with the Shipman thing, he was eventually found out for exactly the same means after many, many years of being the world's most prolific murderer. The most prolific serial killer in history, Harold Shipman, right, killed over 200 people, very likely. And then got this woman in the NHS working with children. We would hope, we'd hope everything's tightly monitored and regulated. That's just closely surveyed. But particularly in the case of children, I guess we would assume that that's the tightest the regulations are for who can work there and who can't. Obviously, the last people who can work there are paedophiles, for instance. Or anyone with that sort of history most certainly couldn't work in a pediatric context, work with children. But then again, white, middle class, woman, no history of anything like that, I assume. I don't even know, frankly. But, well, no. I mean, I just know it wouldn't be possible for her to have a history like that and work there in the job that she was doing. But then again, it's cases like one slips through the net. It's really, but in this creaking bureaucratic behemoth that is the NHS, and is it underfunded? It's a topic for a different video. But my opinion on how the NHS functions is that it functions in a totally backwards fashion, and it's just give up all pretense of free at the point of need, charge rich people through the nose for it, link it all up with the private sector. Yeah, privatise it basically for rich people, and then subsidise the private healthcare for poor people with tax money. That's what the French do. That's what basically everyone in fucking Europe does, because it makes so much more sense. But it's a topic for a different video. And we've got this nationalised and nationalistic and this kind of Chinese communist system of state healthcare in the UK, which by Western European standards is atrocious anyway as a healthcare system. And I'm a very outspoken critic of the NHS, given my experiences with it. But yeah, I mean, one slips through the net, don't they? But we had the most prolific mass murderer or serial killer in the world ever known, and he was an NHS doctor. Now we have this murdering harlot, Lucy Letby, this evil creature murdering 7 babies, maternity units, whatever it was, this case. I'm tempted to say, like, is there going to be much more of this? There was also the Jimmy Savile stuff, which I'm sorry to say, like, oh, we could never blame the NHS, like, but they're to blame. Like, how can they be, like, how can that stuff be going on in an NHS hospital for a series of NHS hospitals for so many years, and yet no one was aware of it? Like, no doctors or anything were aware of that. And I'm just tempted to say at this point, like, the best with it on, I think. Yeah, the doctor who phoned in on the James O'Brien compilation of reportage on this topic that I've just watched or listened to, she was saying that, like, it takes a year for anyone to do anything about this, because it's got to go through successive stages of bureaucracy and administration in the NHS to be able to deal with it. I'm tempted to say, like, this would never happen if it were privatised, if it were in the private sector. I'm tempted to say the reason for that is probably, like, doctors are too afraid of getting sued, because, like, it's not the NHS that then has to, or an NHS trust that has to stand up in a courtroom, is it? More like it's just the doctor themselves, and they'll be plenty rich. There'll be plenty of pickings there for a plaintiff to take money away from them, and seek redress. Fine, a rich doctor in a hospital. If your surgeon leaves their watch inside of you, or whatever goes on in the United States and things like that. I'm not saying we should necessarily be like the United States. Still subsidize healthcare for the poor and so on, and have a strong, robust welfare state. Yes, I think we should have that. But I mean, you know what I mean? The doctor, there's a lot more, a more organic kind of fear that governs those political environments in hospitals. Because they're just afraid of getting sued by their patients, so they toe the line. More like, but this, I mean, it's corrupt, isn't it? It connects again, I'm afraid to say, for what I've been saying about the NHS for years. It's a system that permits corruption. It's a system that is inherently corrupt in a similar sort of way to the way in which the institutions of the Soviet Union were corrupt. And that everything is kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, real politics stuff. I mean, there's no, because it's connected to the government so intimately, or it forms such an intimate part of the government's functioning in this big government sense, in this state socialist sense, then it becomes impossible to criticize it, or impossible to level criticism against it, because people they have sucked on the doctrine of NHS politics so unbelievably hard from the British left, and from the Labour Party in particular, and the Labour Party and its supporters and its acolytes. And this has become like, you cannot question the NHS on the British left. Oh no, you can't. No. If you do so, it means you're not left wing. You're out. You're ostracised by them. That's what really happens to you. If you're an NHS critic, suddenly you're right wing. You must stand in line with the Tories and so on. And there's no third option. And it is that puerile and that asinine and that arbitrary. But the reason why creatures such as this Lucy Letby character are not identified earlier on by people, and why whistleblowers, because you can't criticize the institutions, and that is the major problem. You can't, as someone functioning and working within the institution, feel you can criticize the institution itself, because it's so big, it's so powerful. It is state healthcare. It is not private. You can criticize everything in the private sector. In the United States, everywhere. You can sue your doctor, you can sue McDonald's. No one gives a fuck about providing private businesses with the immunity from getting sued. No, of course not. In the United States, it's a land of fucking freedom and fairness, or it should be anyway. So, I can sue anyone for anything. If I'm an American, right? Or not. I should be a fucking American, actually. Do a Hitchens. That's actually the reason I haven't done it, or not tried to do it yet. I look like I'm copying it so badly. But there we go. I think I've roughly said what I want to say about this. We cannot have these sacred cows. We cannot have these institutions that assume the role of being beyond question, and whose integrity is considered yet unquestionable. We cannot have this. I think it's a symptom of living in a powerful monarchy. I think the monarchy is another such institution, and via Jimmy Savile and all this sort of stuff into the NHS, those people are connected to it. Very likely, Prince Andrew and so on, and what we now know, the revelations with him about Epstein. Prince Charles and Jimmy Savile, is too coincidental? Why are they both consorting with high-profile child molesters? Why is that? They're the heads of government. They're the heads of state. It's too sickening. But there we go. We cannot, in the face of saintly, innocent, normal girls, ladies, women, cannot, in the face of people like this who, of course, in rare cases, granted, use who they are, their gender, or their race, or whatever it is, to mask their inner monstrosity, their inwardly monstrous natures. We can't entertain that sort of paradigm. But there it is. That's the nature of what we do. And we look upon people as normal, i.e. good, unlikely to cause trouble or anything like that. And, that is normality to our minds. And we associate ordinariness with goodness, which is, I think, wrong. Since I think it's the most likely place where monstrosity could be hiding is by bland, boring, ordinariness, and not uniqueness and individuality. And what people need is courage to be able to stand up and criticize people, and to be able to speak their own minds, and to be able to think independently, and to think freely, and to think for themselves about things like this, and about institutions like the NHS. And I've seen horrifying things within the NHS anyway, irrespective of I've never seen baby killing, but I've been through the mental health system, and that shit is not pretty at all. That is some pretty scary, nasty shit that goes on in there. And it's a terrifying system. But, designed probably for the silencing of witnesses and people like that. and designed to facilitate corruption. So yeah, we must be acutely self-policing if we're to have these sorts of institutions. But I think the most functional means of or functional domain in which that sort of self-policing can happen is within the private sector. And to remind doctors that, you know, they are citizens. They don't have, you know, special powers. They're not like a sort of high court judge figure or something like this. You know, they're not. They shouldn't be. Doctors should not be civil servants. Doctors should be private citizens. They should be business people. That is the point. That's the fundamental point I think I wanted to get across. Doctors and nurses should be considered people of business, not people who work as civil servants in a state capacity. Yeah, not like that. And we haven't had that in this country for very long, actually. The sense in which they ought to. You know, so in the 19th century and in the 30s and 40s, like, all doctors were private citizens. All doctors were business people. They were all in private practice, all of them. And you know, poor people nonetheless like might have had access to some medical assistance, like probably not. They just may do without it. And yeah, varying levels of this. And doctors were more like for rich people anyway. And so were schools also back then. And if you had money, which or had enough money, you could send your kids to school and so on. You could afford medical assistance. But the way it works now in most functioning Western nations, France, Germany, Netherlands, etc., is they have state-funded education, state-funded healthcare, but healthcare always costs something at the point of need to prevent people from using it. So we save money that way. So why wouldn't you do that? No. Anyway, I think I've said enough on this.